back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And today we're going to unpack a movie that, I'm very fond of, and our guest is very fond of. And the movie today is going to be Fight Club, David Fincher's 1999 cult classic, very, somewhat controversial.
Somewhat.
Should be a lot of fun. Starring Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and Helena Bonham-Carter. Jared Leto's in there. So is Meatloaf. So should be a good time. How about y'all? But before we get into Fight Club, Darin, let's do a quick recap. We had a guest last time, Phoenix Clouden. What did we talk about with Phoenix?
Phoenix of the Film Code podcast. Again, good Twitter friend. He brought a lot of energy. I think we're in agreement on that to our episode. Just a great. Again, we talked about Ghost. I mean, imagine having a deep dive conversation about Ghost, which we did. I mean, there are a lot of themes we talked about how to make, the friendships that are built from, relationship people that shouldn't really get along, I guess you could say. Or, Patrick Swayze, we talked about him quite a bit. I know Phoenix is a big proponent of the Swayze, as I like to say. Swayze. Cool guy. So again, great conversation that he brought to that, and we appreciate him coming on. Yeah. But I think we're all in agreement. It was a movie that was, worth remembering. We have nothing but fond memories of it. It's not. I think maybe Phoenix liked it better than both of us, but it's a good, solid story. It does what it needs to do. The special effects for the time were groundbreaking. What else? Were there any other thoughts you had on that? You just wanted to recall?
Oh yeah, I mean, I totally agreed. I thought it was a worth remembering film. It was something that was, of the time, but still really, really well made, and it was also. Some of the best acting I've ever seen, by Tony Goldwyn. So it was a lot of fun to rewatch it again.
Yeah, that was good. For the third highest grossing movie, there was a point where it was of all time. It was the third. That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, great achievement. It's definitely made an impact. So Ghost, and again, thank you, Phoenix, for joining us for that conversation.
All right, well, let's delve into Fight Club. But before we do, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
All right.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Why?
How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight.
Wait, let me start earlier. Like many of you, I was stuck.
You want me to deprioritize my current reports until you advise of a status upgrade?
Make these your primary action items.
I couldn't sleep.
No, you can't die from insomnia.
I'd flip through catalogs and wonder, what kind of dining set defines me as a person? This is your life, and it's ending 1 minute at a time. I prayed for a different life.
Soap. I make and I sell soap.
And this is how I met Tyler Durden.
Come on, hit me before I lose my nerve. Ow! You hit me in the ear!
It was on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Can I be next?
We just gave it a name.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is...
Wow, nice.
You do not talk about Fight Club.
Is that your blood?
Some of it, yeah. After Fight Club, we all started seeing things differently.
You're gonna have to keep me up all night.
And she ruined everything.
You're not into her, are you?
No, God, not at all.
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars. But we won't.
We had a plan. To what purpose? In Tyler we trusted.
We gotta take Fight Club up a notch. Each one of you has a homework assignment. You're gonna start a fight with a total stranger.
That's not necessary.
You're gonna lose.
That hurt.
You were looking for a way to change your life. You got it.
I'm stopping this.
It's already done, so shut up.
What kind of sick game are you playing? Oh my God.
Where is my mind?
Kids.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? This is too much.
In the end, you will thank me. Wow! If you could fight anyone, who would you fight?
Shatner. I'd fight William Shatner.
Okay, so here we are talking about Fight Club with Tim Hade. Tim, it has been a long time since we've seen each other. And first of all, I want to say thanks for coming on the show and guesting with us. I'm really excited to talk to you about this movie and also just to get, talk to you again because it's been so long. I think the last time we saw each other was like what, 2006, something like that. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
That's probably a good guess. I left Utah in 2008, and I know I haven't seen you since then. So
Yeah.
it's been a long time.
Are you in LA? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, we lived in Hollywood, West Hollywood from 2010 to 2021, and then we moved. Now we're basically close to Santa Monica,
Okay.
Brentwood area, but it's still Los Angeles. And that's where we're at now.
Okay, awesome. Well, I gotta say, I love the hair. I think that's a great look for you.
Thank you very much.
I've never seen it before on you, but it looks awesome. I love it. So, Tim, I kind of want to revisit when we first met and some of our history together, because you and I, we both went to Utah Valley University, but back when it was Utah Valley State College, and we met in the theater. And we've talked about this play a lot on the podcast. It keeps coming up. I don't know why that is, but Grease. You and I are both in Grease together for the.
That's right. That's where we met.
Yeah, yeah. You were Duty. You were the short, funny one, right? That's what your role was. The blonde, short.
Yeah, I
funny.
guess that's the pitch. The short, funny guy. Yeah.
I just gotta say, sorry, Tim. I just gotta say, what's fun about these conversations is Jonny, whenever he brings on a guest. Like whenever I bring on a guest lately, it's because I've met them through Twitter. Whenever he brings on a guest, it's because he met them in an acting class or a play. So we're just, that's what, sorry, I interrupted you there. Go ahead.
No, it's, I was just going to say I have mixed feelings about Grease. You know, it was mixed reception, but they gave me a song that was out of my range and they lowered it, but it was still out of my range. And then I got sick. And then they put a review in the school newspaper that like called me out as specifically sucking. And I'm like, okay, I wonder if I can do this, because this is just a school newspaper, and like my heart was like, ah. So I didn't do many musicals.
I remember the guitar you used was always backstage, and I grabbed it once and I retuned it because I thought it was out of tune, but it was tuned for you because you had to have it tuned differently. And I retuned it, and I remember the music director got so mad at me. He was like, Vince. Like,
did it get retuned back before I went live?
We did, yeah, we tuned it back. But this is out of tune. This is not right. So I retuned it. But anyway.
Yeah, he had I remember because they brought it down, and I asked him, I'm like, can you go like 5 more steps? I mean, you only went 3, and I can't hit that top note. And they're like, well, what's the worst that could happen? You get a terrible review and called out in the school newspaper? Well, yeah.
Well, you sang Magic Changes, right? That's the song that you, which I thought it was really good. I liked that song. I thought you did a good job. So I'm not sure what you're talking about. But anyway, then we kind of went on and we did some other things. We did what else did we do together? You weren't in Godspell, but you were kind of like on the crew, right?
Yeah, I had to do hours, for a class. So I did the lights. I ran the lights for half the performances. So I got to watch that a lot of times. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
And what was the next thing we did together?
Wasn't Orphans after Godspell?
I know that there's like some in between, but yeah, Orphans was the one where we kind of, I think you and I don't know. I know you, I think we're amazing in it, but I felt like I was kind of getting somewhere, with my acting ability at that moment. I don't think I got any better than that, but I think that was kind of like my peak. I look back on what I've done, and that's always a highlight for me is the Orphans.
So did I see that one? I saw you in that one, right?
Yeah, you came to a showing of it, yeah.
So I had met Tim before. Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say you look familiar to me. You really do.
The third guy from the right in the 4th row, yeah.
But I have to point this out too, Tim. You actually won Best Actor for Orphans.
Yeah, that's true. You remember that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So for being called out in the school newspaper to winning Best Actor, that's a good. I think you're getting a handle on it.
Yeah, very much. I think that, and my love for the script, for Orphans was, and Jonny was in love with it and pitched it to me, and I think that for both of us changed our whole attitude towards how we're gonna perform this, and I think that's one of the reasons we probably worked really hard and did a good job.
Awesome.
I do remember too, we got a standing ovation on the first night, and that surprised us. We were like, whoa, we got a standing ovation on the opening night, and then we expected it in the next performances, and it didn't happen. So it was like, oh, it was a big letdown whenever there was no standing ovation, but it was still a lot of fun. I really loved doing that with you, and I thought you were amazing, and it's fun to talk about it again because it's been so long. But
yeah, I agree. I'm so glad you asked me to be in it because that was a moment for me, acting challenge wise. And I think because we had it wasn't an actual faculty directing, it was Don Markland directing, so another student. Right. It really felt like we could do so many things. It was like endless, and that playfulness for acting, I think, really helped both of us bring a lot more to the table. And I look back on it all the time. And
then you moved to California. You went on to kind of start an acting career. And the one movie I kind of want to bring up is Fortress. I mean, I thought you were great in it. You play the character Al, right?
Yeah.
And I remember like just being so excited to like rent it on Redbox and take it home. Like, hey, my buddy's in this movie. We got to watch it. It was really, really fun to kind of, cheer you on as you were starting your Hollywood career. But kind of talk about it a little bit. Like, what was that like getting out there and then making that movie?
That was actually my first audition in Los Angeles. I met with an agent, and she just was so indifferent to me. It really hit me hard. Like, okay. And she was not big at all. She was just a low-level agent, and she wasn't impressed or liked me very much. So I spent months and months, like as a hermit, practicing yoga, filming myself, watching myself, filming myself, watching myself. And that's how I was able to get the agent that I got, which I was really proud of. And there was the first audition I got was for a World War II film. And I was like, I really want to bring it, because this would be a great start. And I mean, I feel very blessed. They needed a shorter person. So that already, because I'm a ball turret gunner, I'm actually too tall to be a ball turret gunner. You have to be 5'4", and I'm 5'5.5". But I think there was just a sense of, just because it's about World War II, it's important. And again, when you feel that about a script where you're like, I want to be a part of this, which doesn't happen a lot as an actor, it makes it so you care, you work hard. And so that was a great start. And then I expected a lot more after that. Unfortunately, half the budget of the movie got pulled day one. I actually got contacted by the director maybe 6 months ago, who was putting together a director's cut just for his own sanity, because he can do a bunch of stuff that he couldn't do then. And he wants to just do it right, the way that he wanted it done, not to make any money or anything. And he just wanted to know if I'd be available to do some looping ADR. And I said, absolutely. I'm impressed that he's hurt. He's still hurt from it was so CGI heavy. They needed money and they lost so much of it. So it's like, it was released theatrically overseas, but not here, only video in America.
Well, for the budget that you did have, it's impressive for what you guys were able to accomplish for being such a low budget. I thought it was really, really well made.
I appreciate you seeing it. I love that.
It's a fun movie. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Fortress. Tim, he plays Al.
Yes. Ball turret gunner. I'm the one who swears all the time.
Fortress 2 come out.
Maybe he'll do Fortress 2 after he does the director's cut. It'll be like World War. I don't know how with all of us aging 10 years, how you're going to.
It can be like Fortress 2, Al's Revenge or something.
I am one of I won't say any spoilers, so I won't say anything. Maybe I survive, maybe I don't.
But anyway, Tim, for this podcast, we usually like to revisit movies from our childhood and kind of like watch them again as adults and see how they hold up. And for this season, we decided we were going to do like a 90s extravaganza type of thing. And
90s Palooza is what we're calling it.
Yeah. And
Palooza, that's perfect for 90s.
When we asked you to pick a movie from the 90s, I kind of expected you to pick either As Good as It Gets or like Good Will Hunting, because I know you like those movies so much. And when you said Fight Club, I was like, okay, that makes sense too, because I knew you liked Fight Club. So first of all, tell us why you picked Fight Club, and and your history with it. When did you first see it, and tell us why you picked it.
Remember, you need to talk about Fight Club without actually talking about Fight Club. That's important.
That's the third rule of Fight Club. It's very confusing. It's interesting because Fight Club actually came out while we were in Greece.
99, right?
And in October, I believe, while we were in rehearsals. And there was a cast member whose dad was working on Fight Club. I don't know if you remember, but I don't know whether to say his name, but his name was Ryan. And I remember he said, yeah, my dad's working on David Fincher's new movie, Fight Club, and he told me not to see it. He said it's an evil movie and it's disgusting. And I remember being like, okay. I was just impressed that his dad was working on it. He's the best boy grip credited on there. And I thought that's an interesting pitch for a movie, because instead of it making me not want to see it, I was like, okay, I definitely want to see this movie.
Right.
And
that's what happens when you're a kid. Like your parents tell you not to watch this, and so automatically you put that at the top of your list.
100%. And my parents were kind of conservative with movies, but at this time they were kind of opening up. Like I saw Magnolia with them, and they had a heart attack, but that's cool. I didn't see Fight Club with them, but at this time period, I was 18 years old. I was first year college, and this movie Fight Club was coming out, and it was a very strong year for movies. And I loved the game. My friends loved Seven a lot, and but the game had a huge impact on me. I thought it was just excellent, so I was super excited. So I saw it opening day, Friday night that it opened, with Ryan, whose dad worked on it, and I don't know, maybe you were there.
No, I saw it with my younger brother, the two of us.
Oh, okay. I can't remember who I saw it with, and I loved the ride. I was surprised at how funny and humorous it was. And a cool thing that is kind of unrelated, but out here there's a theater called the Arrow Theater, and they play a lot of old movies. And 20-year anniversary for Fight Club 2019, they showed Fight Club. And so Lexi, my wife, and I was like, we got to go see Fight Club. And we went and saw Fight Club. So it was 20 years later. We're seeing it in a theater in Santa Monica. And we just happened to be sitting behind like a whole group of like 17, 18-year-olds. And they were all talking beforehand. They'd never seen it. And so I was like, this is kind of cool. I got a bunch of heads in front of me that are going to be watching this movie from my childhood, and they've never seen it. And when the movie ended, they were all just, their heads were still, and they kind of looked at each other. You could tell they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to communicate about the movie. It was like a head scratching moment, which I didn't expect. I thought these kids are going to love this movie. It's going to blow them away. And instead they were kind of like, and I thought, interesting. Even now, this movie still kind of is creating this, it ends and you have to pick up the pieces yourself. You have to kind of go, okay, what was that movie about? And I assumed that this newer generation, this younger generation, with all the stuff that's come after Fight Club, that they'd see it and maybe be like, well, whatever. But they seem genuinely like it probably.
They're still trying to process it. Yeah, they're
exactly.
Like, just watch. Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I picked it, because I did think, why did I pick Fight Club? It's not my favorite movie from the 90s. Good Will Hunting, you said, and
As Good as It Gets, right?
As Good as It Gets. I still love those movies. The screenplays for both those movies I absolutely love, and the performances. But Fight Club, I think because it's such an interesting conversation. It's a controversial movie when it came out. I really like that about it, and a super talented director and actors that are very talented. So it's got all these things that I thought would make for a great discussion for the three of us. That's why I picked it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I'll go briefly over my history. Like I mentioned, I saw it with my younger brother. We went into it blind. I had no idea what I was going to get into. And I think it was just kind of like on a whim. I was like, hey, you want to go see a movie with me? And he's like, sure. So we went to this theater, and we didn't do that very often. He's more of an athlete. So he plays sports and he doesn't really get into the movies as often. So it was kind of like I'm going to see a movie with my brother who, we don't do this very often. So we sat down, we watched it. And again, I had no idea what to expect. And it kind of hit me pretty hard. I was like, wow, what was that? That was something. Like I remember, like I kind of became obsessed after that. I was like, I as soon as I had a chance to buy it, I bought it, and I just watched it over and over again. And I just started to study it, like how'd they do this? And I watched all the commentary, all the documentaries. Like I just wanted to know how they did it, because I was so impressed with the filmmaking side of things. I wasn't really on board with Brad Pitt until Fight Club. I remember liking Interview with the Vampire. I remember liking, things he's done, like Thumb on the Waves, whatever. I was kind of like, he's fine. But then Fight Club comes out, and I was like, holy crap, this guy's amazing. I've always liked Edward Norton, but I became a huge fan of Brad Pitt after Fight Club. And then of course, he had Snatch and everything else that I think he's amazing. And 12 Monkeys. But anyway, yeah, so I don't have a huge history with it, but I do remember just being really impressed and really blown away and becoming obsessed with this movie. Darin, yours?
Well, we've talked about Quentin Tarantino, and we've talked about 90s movies. That's where we kind of cut our teeth. And I think around this time, like Fincher had been a name. So I know he did Alien 3, and that was big. I remember seeing Alien 3 in the theater, even though that movie is compromised, I think. Style-wise and tone-wise, I think it's amazing, even though it's kind of muddled in a lot of studio ways. So it made an impression. So even though he's kind of disowned it, I think it's still a strong piece of work, I think, especially when you don't compare it to the first two Aliens. It's like its own entity. And then when 7 came out, that's the one where I was like, oh, David Fincher, like that. I think that's the one where he made a name for himself. All of a sudden, he made a good movie. People still talk about it today. People still call it one of the best serial killer movies. And I think Jonny and I, we probably saw that together in a theater. And again, very good movie, a B movie that's elevated to A level because of the direction, the acting. And Brad Pitt was one of those. I didn't really like Brad Pitt until 7, because I know that he was a pretty boy. And then when he did all the weird stuff with his character in 12 Monkeys that same year, and then he, in 7, the part that nails him for me is at the end when he's conflicted about what's in the box, and you can see all the emotions going up through his head. I was like, he's not just a pretty boy. And then obviously Fight Club became, that's when he became, for me, like the character actor, even though he's doesn't have the looks of a character actor. Brad Pitt's one of those guys that he's a matinee idol, but he's got B movie looks. B movie chops, where he's willing to go like ugly places and be creative. You know what I mean? And so that's what I like about him. He could be a Cary Grant, but he's interesting. He keeps doing these weird. So anyway, that's my Brad Pitt story. But by the time The Game came out, I'm with you, Tim. The Game's it's not like, I think the only thing people really argue about is the ending, because, why would he jump off that one side of the building? You know what I mean? That's as far as I'm talking about that one. But it's like, for right now, but other than that, it was more like a solid, I just think that The Game creates such a wonderful mood, like from the first frames. And there's a feeling of dread that goes through that whole movie. So even at the end, when it turns out like everything's fine, it was all planned, you're still not sure. Like it still feels like, that's how good the tone is for that movie, that it still feels dreadful. But by the time this movie came out, it was like, Fincher's a name, and I'm going to go start seeing movies that he directs just because. And so even though I didn't know what to expect from Fight Club, I knew it was a Fincher movie. I knew it was going to do something to my brain. And so that's why I was excited to watch it. I'm one of those people, I know we'll talk a little bit later about the movements that Fight Club caused, which I think is the opposite of what it was trying to say. But yeah. I'm one of those guys that I can understand what it's saying. I didn't really involve myself. I was like, well, that was neat. It was a nice comment on stuff, but I didn't take it as a new way of life. I didn't take it as like a new step forward from filmmaking. I just thought it was a nice movie that was trying to do some rabble rousing. So that's my history with Fight Club, to the point where I think it's fine. I think it's a good show, but there are people that literally have that as their top movies. And again, people that have come up to David Fincher and said, Fight Club is my boyfriend's favorite movie. Fight Club is my favorite movie. He'll look at them in the face and go, what is wrong with you? You know what I mean? So it's an interesting dichotomy that the movie has, that it causes so much anger, and even its director is like, you guys have missed the point, you know what I mean? But he's kind of like wringing his hands and delighting in all the controversies that he started.
Well, like you, Darin, I didn't get too involved with the message of it. I was just more, mesmerized by the filmmaking side of things and the acting and the writing. I thought that's artistic and it's poetic, and it's just like, it's so fun to watch when everything like that comes together. It's magic, and it's so fun to watch. But as far as the message goes, I didn't really care what they were saying. You know what I mean? Didn't matter to me one bit that it was about, mischief and mayhem and terrorism and that kind of thing. I was more interested in the fact that, this is a great actor, great director, and great cinematography, and it all worked. It all came together. Well, Tim, we asked you before it started to kind of come up with a topic or like an idea or about the movie that you wanted to kind of talk about. And so what was it that you wanted to bring to the table?
Well, as Darin was talking about, there's a twist in the film, and interestingly enough, when I saw the film the first time, when the twist happened, I almost was like, I was like, oh, I wasn't really like, whoa. It was just like, oh, I wasn't in the mood for a twist. But it didn't distract from the film for me. I still enjoyed it until the end, but it wasn't a twist where I was like, oh, okay. But on subsequent viewings, I would notice all these jokes and all these things that then all of a sudden is like, wow, that's really cool how they make this work without making it so when you're watching the movie, you're thinking, you feel like you're missing some major thing, which sometimes happens with twists. It feels like it works, but then it works in a completely different way once the twist is revealed. But yet it's not, you can watch the film and the twist isn't like the reason to like the film. It's not like the selling point of the film. It just happens to be one of the great moments of the film, which then helps it blossom into a whole other creature, which I find, I don't know how many other films I would say that about that have a big twist like Fight Club has.
Well, this came out the same year as the Sixth Sense, which I think is the antithesis of that. The Sixth Sense, the twist, and again, we're spoiling it for people who haven't seen the Sixth Sense. When you find out that Malcolm in that movie is dead, and he's been dead the whole time, that forces you to go back and look at the whole movie differently. And that's why you go back and see it a second time, right? It is fun with this, like, especially knowing the twist going in with my viewing this time. It was fun watching like the conversations, the first night after he has that sex romp with Marla and she comes down and Jack, we're calling him Jack. I know he's the Norton character. He's unnamed in the, but I think a lot of people refer to him as Jack. So that's what I'm going to call him. But when Jack is like, what are you doing here? Like, you're in my house. And she's like, screw you. And she walks out. It's like, oh, like that could totally, like, you wouldn't get that if you didn't know they were the same character. You know what I mean? But it's like, I think it's the opposite. It's like, so you go back and you see the Sixth Sense to see all this stuff. And that's here, but the twist is not the point of Fight Club. It's just another stage of, oh no, this guy's so far gone that he created this personality to kind of give himself the life that he can't have, right? And so it's part of the narrative instead of it being that twist. And the other movie was Arlington Road that had a really good twist, and how that movie ended. Kind of with the Jeff Bridges character becoming part of the actual conspiracy. I thought that was good, but that too is a different ending. So what you're saying about this one, I like that. It's like, you're kind of okay, but there's still half an hour to go in the movie where you're still processing a lot of stuff. But I agree with you. It's only one part of this narrative that's happening.
And the thing is too, with the twist in Fight Club, it didn't do what the Sixth Sense did. The Sixth Sense brought people back to the theater again, like multiple times. So it was a huge success because of the twist. However, Fight Club was kind of a flop. It didn't really make that much money in the theater. So I think they pulled it kind of early or something. It didn't get a cult following until it came out on DVD. But,
even the studio was not happy with Fincher's movie. They pulled back on the marketing because they thought it was going to be a loss. And so that's crazy.
The best boy grip telling people not to go see it.
Yeah. It's disgusting, right?
Yeah.
I would say the reveal of the twist of the conversation between Jack and Tyler is probably my least favorite, because it's like we're having to explain everything to the audience. But having said that, it's very important, because then you do get a glimpse of like, okay, because when it happens, you're like, what do you mean? You guys have been fighting. and then you see, oh, he's fighting himself. And then when you see it a second time and it pauses as he's in his boss's office halfway, and he says, for some reason, I thought of my first fight with Tyler.
Yes.
It just like, when you see that the second time, you go, oh, it's just like one of those cool little moments where you're like, that's so cool. That it was cool the first time. I mean, it's a cool little side, narration the first time you see it, but when then it's like, oh, that's amazing.
With The Sixth Sense, again, we're going to keep mentioning it again. It's like, yeah, that's cool. And so you go see it again. I mean, it's a fun twist, but I don't think it plays into the movie's themes as much as it does here. Like, they make constant references. Obviously, this movie is about identity and losing yourself in product placement and things like that, or the things you own, right? There's the place where he lives is called Pearson Towers or something like that. And it says on the plaque, what does it say? A place to be somebody. When he's, he goes to these meetings at the beginning, he has a different name every time. He's searching for his identity. Even Marla's like, who are you? Are you Rupert? Are you these different?
Cornelius?
Cornelius. Who are you? And so it keeps making these, it's about that identity. That's what this whole movie is about, and how these guys kind of become part of this movement. They're searching for their identity because they're disillusioned. Again, that twist, it plays into the movie's themes. Like Sixth Sense doesn't do that. I don't think it's a fun twist, but it doesn't. That's not what it's about, other than Cole trying to help the Malcolm character. You know what I mean? Does that make sense as far as the twist go?
Yep. And it's interesting. I was thinking about it just this morning, how the end of the 90s kind of had this theme of these people that have lost their identity in corporate America. Office Space, obviously, I think it's 98 came out. But I forgot that this thing I noticed years ago about American Beauty came out in 99.
Absolutely.
And there's a similar scene where he is in the meeting with his boss, and he blackmails him so that he can then continue on life getting money. So it's interesting. Within a couple months, a movie comes out where a guy hates his job and ends up blackmailing his way out of the job to continue what he wants to do in his life. And then you have The Matrix, which is another
oh my gosh, yeah,
another movie where a person's lost in this corporate mindless, and they have an alternate identity and an alternate life. It's this, you can tell the 90s is really this theme of losing who we are in this system. Is, Fight Club has it just as much as these other movies, if not more. This movie
seemed to be part of a movement. So that's cool. I didn't even think about The Matrix, and that is obvious, like Office Space, American Beauty. And again, scenes with bosses, I think people were just so disillusioned with was a wish fulfillment, just to be able to march in and tell off your boss, right? So yeah, it didn't really hit big at the time, because maybe there was that attitude of it being disgusting and people were kind of turned off by it, but it did become something. And that's something we definitely want to come back to with the way that the movement that this movie created.
Speaking of that boss scene, the one thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that this is actually a comedy, like a dark comedy, but it's a comedy. You're supposed to laugh at this stuff. And one of the funniest sequences is when Tyler gives everybody an assignment to go out and pick a fight, with strangers, and then lose. You have to lose the fight. And that whole sequence is just hilarious when people are like trying to start fights, and like, it's just awesome. And then it ends with Tyler or Jack walking into his boss's office, and the audience just went up in hysterics when that happened, because you knew what was coming once you walked in. However, I do know that I think that scene was supposed to be in a different part of the movie, and they moved it like for the final cut. So, and it works so much better where they finally ended up putting it. So, but
really,
anyway,
where was it? Where was it originally? Because it's perfect where it is.
Earlier in the movie,
I think just before Tyler loses his fight to Lou, I think is when that scene happened. And then it's kind of this reflection of like he does that, then Tyler loses his fight with Lou, then he sets up the expectation everyone lose a fight, and then you have the sequence, but you don't have that period at the end of the sentence, which moving that scene there, like you said, Johnny, they noticed from test audiences, they all laughed as soon as he knocks on the door. They know that a fight's going to happen. Whereas in before, he's knocking on the door and they're like, okay, this is another scene between him and the boss.
Right.
Well, that's the definition of finding the movie in the edit, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That would have been weird if they moved that. And Johnny, like the part where they lose, I wrote that down. That's one of the parts I thought that's really funny. I like the part where Jack and Marla are trying to auction off the little meetings that they're going to go to. Like, you take testicular cancer, I'll take. I thought that was really funny because we know why they're arguing, but if you listen to anybody else, I mean, so that was great. So I don't know. I thought, when you're talking about dark humor, the way that Fincher injects the humor in this, because if you read like behind the scenes stuff, he worked with the screenwriter Jim Ools, I think that's his name, so they were writing it and organizing it as they went. So just being able to instill that humor, it kind of takes, because that's a dark story, right? This is a dark movie, but that humor kind of takes the edge off. And for me, at least, watching it this time, it made me realize this is not meant to be a reality. But even with the twist, there are parts. Whenever you have a twist like this, there's always parts where you're like, well, hold on. Like, how is Tyler able to drive the car while Jack is in the passenger seat and they got the two people in back? I would understand if it was just Tyler and Jack, but then you have the two guys sitting in the back kind of confused. And so I was like, hold on, how is he driving the car?
Think about it though. What if he's not? What if he's in the passenger seat just steering him from there, and they're just looking at themselves like, this guy's crazy. He's not even driving.
Yeah. Right. Well, they have conversations with both, so I don't know. It takes you out of the movie for a second, then when you look back on it, I thought that was interesting. But that humor
makes you wonder: is the conversation, how much of the conversation is in his head, and how much of the conversation is he verbalizing, which then other people hear, and then they're like, "Have you heard about Tyler Durden? He's insane." Because that's kind of this reputation he has, is he's an insane genius who possibly sometimes is talking to himself. But we don't know. It's kind of like left to our own interpretation, all those scenes of what the interaction between the two of them, what's happening.
A guy's so crazy that he'll even walk into an office knowing that people are going to cut his balls off. Because of these,
You know what's funny though, when speaking of the whole narrator Jack and his name thing, I didn't even catch for the longest time that he didn't have a name. They didn't give him a name in the movie, and so I was like, it didn't even like register in my mind as I was watching it that this character doesn't have a name. And it wasn't until later that I kind of, like you, Darin, sort of associated him with the name Jack because of the whole,
I am Jax.
I am Jax.
Medulla oblongata. Right.
But
and I believe his name was Jack in the screenplay. They had his name as Jack.
Just to make it easier.
Different from Tyler, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, this movie, when I think about it, just it kind of feels like the movie itself is like an oxymoron, right? Like it's dirty, it's kind of raw in your face, and it's about fighting and mischief and mayhem and terrorism, all that stuff. But it's also it's clean, like it's so polished, and the way the filmmaking is put together, you're watching this ugly thing in a really pretty way. You know what I mean? So like that's why I was so fascinated by it. Like I loved seeing this dark material, but portrayed in like this really clean and kind of like artistic sort of cinematic way.
Yeah, I would agree. It feels. I mean, Fincher was, especially the game, I think, is just orchestrated and cut and paced very well, and it feels very pristine. And I think that is a similar style continues with this film, and I think it does help. Sell it in a way that's different than like Cronenberg or some other directors that might have made some choices that made it feel dirtier. Like even Seven feels like when it ends, I'm kind of like, I feel like kind of dirty. Whereas when Fight Club ends, I don't have a similar like I've just been like thrown in some garbage heap and now I'm like crawling out of it, which is surprising because it does have the few graphic violence scenes and even some of the things they say is pretty like, it feels, it resonates very deeply, but it's also, again, funny, and it helps us make peace with the harder to swallow aspects of the themes of the film.
Yeah, we forgot to mention even the part where they're talking about him splicing the porn movies into the kids' movies, right? And just the way that the first time it happens, you don't see it, you just hear like a woman groan, and then it cuts to the mom like looking at, because she's, and then obviously when they show the person's the penis, obviously the close-up of it, and then it cuts to that little girl who's just sobbing. It's just so, I remember during that part in the theater just laughing hysterically, just because I get the anarchic kind of humor of it. And so That's definitely something that stands out.
The way they introduce Tyler is by splicing him into the frames.
Right.
And I remember when I saw it, I remember seeing something and thinking that I saw something, but I wasn't sure that I did. And I was like, what was that? And it kept happening. And it's not until you meet Tyler and he actually joins the film that they stop doing that, because he's just kind of like having little blips here and there of just images of Tyler, like, you know, with his arm around somebody or something. And I remember like just being kind of, did I see that? What was that? And then they started talking about splicing pornography into the films. And I was like, oh, that's what they're doing that for. You know, It's like, again, they're tying the message into the movie.
Right. Well, the other thing it ties into Tim, like you're saying, when you go through this second time, it's kind of fun to pick up on a lot of stuff. I think there's a part where Jack picks up a phone and there's a sign on the phone that says only for incoming calls or outgoing calls. And yet Tyler is able to call him back, you know, so he's able to call, but then when it calls back, that's obviously all in his head. But the way that it splices it in, I thought it was a funny touch, but thinking about it this time, I think it happens either 4 or 5 times. I think the first time you see it, it's in the doctor's office where he's trying to get some medication for his not being able to sleep. Second time is, I think, during one of the meetings that they have. You see him spliced in. You see him spliced in when he's watching out after Marla when she's kind of leaving. You see him in the office kind of spliced when he's trying to make copies. What I think is interesting about that is every time, and that's like you said, Johnny, that's before he shows up. Every time he's mentally challenged or anytime Jack feels emasculated or something, that's when Tyler is spliced in. He's spliced in at perfect moments. So if you're looking at it, because the doctor says no, and he can't come back with anything. So that's when he sees Tyler. When you see him, when he notices Marla the first time and sees her walking off and there's a flash of him, it's like he's threatened by Marla. When he's in his office, obviously he sees the flash. So I think whenever he's spliced in, it's not just to tie in with that porn thing. And that's cool because it is tied in with the movie thing, but it's also part of that theme. And it builds to when he's introduced and created as a living being in Jack's head, because that's who he wants to be. Like Tyler is everything that Jack isn't. I thought that was, so again, all these things are tying in so well with the theme. Much better than it just, there's a fun little twist that they threw in at the last minute. So again, very, very good stuff from a screenplay.
Yeah, I love that you pointed out that there's the times he's showing up or moments where Edward Norton is feeling emasculated or conflicted. I never picked up on that, but I similar with Johnny, I remember noticing that in the theater. And it's hard because at the time we were all seeing this on film.
Yeah.
And in every single frame has got little tiny things, all these things that you don't really see anymore. They cleaned up most of the stuff by this point in the films we see. So
like the cigarette burns and stuff like
cigarette burn. It's hard to convey to people what it was like to see that in film, because it would be, now when you see it, it's so, the image is crisp and then boom, Tyler. But in the theater, it was like, did they have a problem there with it? You kind of get used to seeing little things here and there, but when it's a specific person that seemed like they just appeared, it is this moment that is, unfortunately, we can't, unless you see it in film, but that's probably very rare occasion you're going to see it projected in 35 millimeter.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets very meta at certain, that whole part, all of a sudden when there's that fourth wall break and Jack is talking to us. I like that chemistry that he has with Brad Pitt, like just the way they're able to go back and forth, and it's funny and it's very like fresh and it's not, at no point I don't think is this movie weighed down, even when it starts really hammering home the message, because there's obviously, it's the dark stuff, there's the humor stuff. The way that it ends, obviously, with the dick pic showing up is one of the very so it's
tell a story about that if you don't mind.
We're talking about penises a lot in this episode, and I'm sorry to everybody.
our mutual friend who we've had on the show before, Ryan Templeman, we did a scene from Fight Club together, and I had to bring in we did a scene from Fight Club, and I brought in the movie to so we could kind of watch it and write down the lines and everything. Anyway, the class was over, and I put in the VHS, and I just watched the movie, and I didn't rewind it. And so it was the very, very end of the credits, and it happened to pop up right when it was there. And I was like, "Oh crap!" And I heard it turn the TV on. Man, I was like, "Did anybody see that?" And Ryan was like, "I saw it." It was pretty funny.
That's hilarious. And if I do think that the penis shot is more than just gratuitous or funny. There is, I think, because the film is about masculinity.
Yeah.
And there is an underlining theme of homoeroticism that's in there.
Yep.
that then makes it so it's not just a penis shot. It's kind of like, just like with Tyler showing up, it's like this little shot of like, this all kind of boils down to testicles and a penis. I mean, testicles come into play and penis comes into play in this movie, and so it actually makes it so that this little shot isn't just like just to be like shocking. It's kind of like, no, this is part of this story. It's about men and being emasculated, feminized in a way, which, I wonder how it holds up to modern audiences in that aspect.
Well, if you look at the whole trans movement and things like that, I think that definitely still plays. Again, the theme of identity, it's you can look into all these things and find all these different ways that you can personalize it. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I think, like I said, there's an anarchic kind of spirit to this movie, but I think that would tie in because testicles is that the sign of masculinity? Is that what it takes to be masculine or feminine?
Is that what a man looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. That the part where you're talking about the homoeroticism, there's not just the, UFC fights and everything. I always like to make fun of those things because it's like, this is, you guys like watching like half naked men, like sweaty men, like fighting and grappling with each other. There's definitely something homoerotic about that. I just thought that when it's Tyler and Jack getting along, and that part, Johnny, you talked about with is that what a man looks like? It's like, they could be a couple, you know what I mean? Even though, again, they're the same person. Like if you were to see them as partners, they are kind of having that couple. And so what defines you as masculine too? Like the friends that you make. Again, all these things. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Tim, with the splicing in of the man junk. But it's like even though it's a joke, it ties in. I think that's important. You can lose the thread. I think the thread is pretty tight held throughout this movie. It's about that masculinity. There is, when he goes to that testicular cancer meeting, and it has I think David Andrews is the actor, when he breaks down and says, my wife and I always wanted this many kids, and I'm happy that she's able to have that with her new husband. It's like, yeah, they're emasculated, but there is, I don't know, I think there's a genuine pain that comes through, and that's throughout this movie, and I think that's why people latched onto it.
I was going to say, one of the first things we're seeing is not only the testicular, but he has breasts. So it's men who've lost testicles and they're feminine. There's this feminine aspect of it, which I always just thought was a joke, younger. And as I've gotten older and have watched it, I'm like, okay, they're addressing it right off the bat. There's this kind of emasculated sense that these people are in, which is, which then makes sense that would create this angst-ridden, violent, anarchist energy, because it's just, how could that not happen if after years and years and years of trying to repress or to, having anybody feel that they can't let out all the things that Edward Norton says that Jack says in the narration, so many things that hit home even now. And when I was watching it, thinking, all this stuff I think resonated with me, even if I didn't think about it. I didn't like consumerism. I didn't know who I was going to be. Am I going to be defined by what I own and what my status is? And I didn't want to go to some corporate job and do that kind of stuff. All that stuff still resonates with me. And I think I was in denial back then, but it resonated with me back then. I was like, yeah, this is like a hell. This is not a life. This is, and at the end, that's what Tyler says to Jack. He's like, what do you want to do? You want to go back to the sitcoms and the day job? I won't do it. And it's like, there's a part of me that feels that. I don't want to go to that world. I don't want to exist in that world because it feels almost like a zombie, a dead landscape of dead people.
And there are cases like after this, there are cases of let's see, what is it? In like Menlo Park, California, there were fight clubs that popped up. In Texas, New Jersey, Alaska, Princeton University had a fight club. There was a 17-year-old that detonated a bomb outside of a Starbucks as late as 2009, and he claimed he was part of Project Mayhem. And there's a guy, a pastor, Mark Driscoll of Mars Hill Church in Seattle. He became obsessed with this movie to the point where he was instilling that in his church services to get that point across. So it's so many things in here are, I think people are just taking the wrong message of it. And in a way that's, do you guys think, Jonny, do you think this is like an irresponsible movie for doing that? Or is it more, because I'm not okay with rape scenes in movies, because if you show a rape scene, it's gratuitous and there's pain to that's going to trigger people. But there's going to be somebody in an audience that's going to be turned on by it. So in a way, I think rape scenes are irresponsible and should not be done. They should not be done. But I don't feel the same way about this movie. Why is that?
I don't know, but for me, I've always been able to recognize what I'm watching isn't real. It's not happening. You know what I mean? People who take it like this is a message to me and I need to act on it. That's on them. If they're gonna go do something like that, that's their decision to do these stupid things. It's a movie. You're not supposed to. They're not. You know. I don't know. Like my kids always like have a hard time watching harder movies, and I'm always telling them, hey guys, it's not real. What you're seeing on the screen is not real. In fact, it's art. I look at it like it's art. It's not something to take and go apply to my daily life. You know what I mean? So the people that do that, it's just baffling to me.
Yeah, I think, and Tim, I want get your opinion on this. The thing I noticed this time is, number one, that sense of belonging that the Fight Club starts to give people, and the way all of a sudden they become blinded, because what Tyler's doing, like he gives out homework assignments, but they get more and more dangerous as they go. So you're kind of brainwashing these people that are brain dead anyway, that think that they found something to grasp onto, and they're unable to see the evil that's going on, or the anarchy, or the what Tyler's trying to do. This is how cults start, right? This is how Nazism starts. This is how genocide, mass suicide. This is how all this stuff comes about, is these people that have this sense of belonging, and they just go with it because this only person that's talking, they must be telling the truth because I feel something. And I think people are just taking it the wrong way. Again, I like this movie as it being a statement, and there are going to be people that take it the wrong way. I don't know, Tim, what are your thoughts on that?
I struggle with that even for myself, because when I stopped acting, I was focusing on filmmaking, and I would get severe writer's block for this very reason, because I feel like I would be afraid of what to create, to put out for various reasons we're talking about, because you don't want to put something out that makes the world worse. You don't want to make art that could then later on in life, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe even though the conversation needed to be had, somehow the interpretation of my art is lost on people, and then it causes that. So and with Clockwork Orange, I think that Kubrick went through a similar thing, and he got threats, and he withdrew the film from the UK market, and he probably had inner turmoil about wondering, well, by not judging Alex hard enough, I then glorify what they're doing, but I'm simply trying to just be indifferent about what they're doing and more critical about what the solution is to what they're doing. And just a side note, did you guys know there was a Fight Club in Club Omni in Provo?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I remember that because I had done some gigs at Club Omni as a band, and I remember that being a news story because I told my mom how much I liked the movie. And I remember Club Omni got in a bunch of trouble because they were doing, in the basement at Club Omni, they were doing a late night Fight Club. And I remember thinking, is this really what people got from the movie? Do you want to go? Because I'm not a violent person at all. I'm probably way closer to a pacifist than anything. So the violent side, I don't watch UFC. I don't like violence at all. That part of me of the movie doesn't appeal to me. But if I'm being honest, in my childhood and the history of stuff that I went through, the anarchist and anger you feel when you realize that your life isn't turning out how you thought it would be. It's not a fairy tale. You become disillusioned. I went through a lot of that kind of stuff, probably through age of like 12 to 15, 16, 16 years old, excuse me, and did stuff that probably stuff that I'm not proud of, but nothing like Project Mayhem. But my friends, we were all kind of on that trajectory in our behavior, very angry, very anti-school, anti-society. And when I saw the film, I was in a much different place in 99 than in like 94. But looking back at it now, it's like, I know all this. I remember, even though I was in denial, I remember thinking, I don't know what life's meaning is, and I don't really care. And so you kind of have this watch it all burn attitude. I didn't do anything that crazy, but I had that in my past, in my history. So when I see Project Mayhem start to pick up steam, it does kind of resonate for me in my past of the feeling that I felt growing up where I grew up. And, I didn't stay on that path, I probably had an awakening moment like Jack does, where it's like, okay, I think this is going too far. I don't want to continue doing this kind of behavior where it is destructive, vandalistic type of behavior. And I think those things, I think film and art needs to explore these things, because it's one of the only ways that we can really have discussions about topics that otherwise just result in arguments or don't hit us on the same level that a film, which can be like a dream, can have an impact on the way we think or the way we perceive things. So I think it is important that films like Fight Club get made, and ideally have responsible people that are trying their best to be like, let's not try and glorify the things that shouldn't be glorified, but at the same point, let's not make it black and white and just say, look at this behavior, isn't it horrific? It's like Fight Club does that, where it's like you kind of, at some point, the audience goes, this isn't good. They shouldn't be doing this.
It's gone too far, right?
It's gone too far. I mean, they might feel that right when they're fighting, but some people, the people who are attracted to fighting, they definitely don't feel that at the fighting part. It's not until maybe when they're like talking about blowing up buildings, or when it's the human sacrifice things, even though there's that beautiful side of it, when it's like, yeah, you're putting a gun to someone's head and telling them to go chase their dreams. But that is, morally, ethically, it's like, that's starting to get pretty questionable there.
Yeah, it's kind of in your face in order to get that message. Jonny, you mentioned like it's on them, right? And I think, we talk about rape, we talk about penises. Like, if you're going to go out and rape, then if you can't use your penis responsibly, you shouldn't have it. You know what I mean? Like, that should be taken away from you. It's the same thing with movies. Like, if you can't handle the responsibility of movies, maybe you shouldn't watch movies. Tim, you mentioned Clockwork Orange, which is on, I think that's my least enjoyable experience as a movie I've ever had, like the whole time. And Clockwork Orange is a movie that taught me I can turn movies off. I don't have to sit through this whole thing if I disagree with what's happening. And it makes me feel, again, I'm not trying to come up as a prude here, but there are movies that push things too far that it's like, I don't need this. I already know this stuff is going on. I don't need this in my life. But it's like in Clockwork Orange, the rape scene toward the beginning, when you see Alex and his friends, the way that the camera is shot, it's shot from the perspective of the husband seeing his wife get attacked. And so it's very, like you said, it's very like disillusioned. It's trying to be apart from that. It's trying to be kind of objective. But an idiot won't watch the movie that way. They'll just see rape as exciting. And so even though the film language is telling them you shouldn't be thinking this way, there are going to be people that don't get what film language is. They're just going to see it the way that they want to see it. It's the same thing. We're talking about fight clubs popping up all over the country and influencing people and stuff like that. In this movie, when it happens, when Jack realizes what's happening and he goes from place to place with those tickets, trying to stop things, and everywhere he goes, to the point where he goes to the police and the police are even in on it. When you're watching the movie, I'm being told that this has gone too far, that this should not be happening. You should not go to Texas if you live in California and see a fight club pop up that you started in California, right? Something's wrong with that. And it's treated as funny, but we look at in the movie as dark and this shouldn't be happening. And yet there are people who don't get that, who start a Fight Club at Club Omni who like try to explode a bomb outside of Starbucks. There are people that don't understand that this movie is teaching them this is not good. And that's why I think Jack turns on. It's fun until, like you said, it gets to the point where they start blowing up buildings and then it becomes something different. Again, this is not just an entertainment movie. There's so much happening. And I think that has a lot to do with Fincher and the kind of filmmaker that he is.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'd like to kind of discuss the top three actors for briefly, if we can, like, because Edward Norton, I think, has an awesome performance in this movie. And we talked about Brad Pitt, and also Helena Bonham Carter. We got to talk about her. So let's talk about Edward Norton first, because he's the narrator, the lead
Protagonist.
I thought this is probably one of his best. I know we talked about him in our Rounders episode, and I thought he was great in that. I also mentioned American History X. I thought he was phenomenal in that movie. But The Fight Club is, again, one of just Edward Norton's just best performances that I've ever seen. So what did you guys think of Edward Norton?
Tim?
I completely agree. And I think it wasn't until I've watched it twice since we decided it. I watched it like a week ago, and then I watched it again yesterday. And it occurred to me, I mean, Tyler Durden, I got my hair cut like him. I started wearing a leather jacket with the collar poked out. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that jacket.
And I went to the salon in Beverly Hills, and I asked the guy to cut my hair like Tyler Durden, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Brad Pitt's stylist worked at that salon in Beverly Hills, and so he knew how to cut because people would come there often, and he knew the exact product that was in his hair. So I had a Tyler Durden haircut for a while." And it was always like Brad Pitt is the movie. And watching it last week, I was just like shocked at how great the tone of the narration is. Mm-hmm. He nails the humor and the dialogue of what he's conveying about how he feels inside and what kind of furniture defines him. It's so pitch perfect, and it really starts. I mean, he nails the whole tone of the film before Tyler shows up. He is so good. It's probably my favorite role now that I've really thought about it. I mean, I'm like, this is when he's a little bit softer at the end. I'm less attracted to it, but it's thematically it makes sense. But that opening. The whole part until he probably starts losing his connection to Tyler. Not that it's bad. It's just it becomes a softer Jack. Mm-hmm. Harder Jack I think is just the humor and everything is just absolutely perfect. He nailed it.
We talked about this during our Rounders episode. Edward Norton is an actor that's so eclectic and he's so interesting and he tries to do interesting things with every role that he takes on. Rounders was interesting. Primal Fear obviously was interesting. American History X, stuff like that. It's more disappointing when he shows up in a Bourne Legacy or we talked about this too, like Incredible Hulk. I went to go see the movie because Edward Norton was in it. I went to see it because Tim Roth was in Incredible Hulk. So at the end, or whenever they turn in these big CGI monstrosities, which are purposely not meant to embody their looks at all, I check out. So it's like, this isn't what I'm here for. I want to see Edward Norton do some interesting things. And you're right about that narration. First of all, I wrote down like this narration is so sharp. And the way that, Norton could be blunt about it. He could be too sincere about it. I think he walks that knife edge where he's detached from what's happening. So that, again, I don't want to know if it's right necessarily, but if you're in the right frame of mind for this movie, you get that, again, this is all ridiculous. This is ridiculous stuff that's happening. And you're not supposed to side with what's happening. You're not supposed to side with making furniture your ideal, but you're also not supposed to side with blowing up buildings and, demolishing like national monuments and things like that. So that narration, you're right. That nails everything that's necessary about that. I do think, as eclectic as he is, I think this is his role. This is the movie for Edward Norton as far as his filmography goes. So,
Okay. And what about Brad Pitt? I know we talked about him a little bit. My favorite Brad Pitt role is probably 12 Monkeys. I think he's just fantastic in that movie. I do like him in Snatch. I like him in this one. And like I said, like this is the one that I kind of went, wow, I like this actor. He's really, really good. I'm not as impressed recently with what he's been doing. I mean, there's been a few, like I like Burn After Reading. I like, some of those more just where he plays the quirky characters. I like that Brad Pitt. I don't like the serious Brad Pitt. I have a hard time with that. But
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Brad Pitt is a good Brad Pitt.
He's okay in that, but he's too much of a straight man in that movie for me. I like the more quirky characters that he plays. What do you think, Tim? What do you think about Brad Pitt in Fight Club and in his whole career?
There's specific moments that I think he just is so good, like his little speech he gives before Lou shows up, where he's talking about them being they're the middle children of civilization, and he just is so good. And I think there's a couple other ones where he's just like he's giving these like sermons, and I think he nails the tone on that. And I really like the bar scene as well, where we're learning about Tyler in this back and forth, which they actually, I was listening to the commentary, they shot with 2 cameras because they were just spitballing ideas. We were talking about consumerism and the things you own end up owning you. And Fincher was talking about having the 2 cameras was great because there's, Brad is communicating a lot with his hands and the way he's drinking, and it's continuous between the 2 takes because they're shooting twice, which he said the DP was super upset because he has to light for 2 camera angles, but it made for this great exchange, which is a scene where I think that it sets up them fighting each other. And it's like crucial to understanding who Tyler is and what he believes and where Edward Norton's character is and what he believes. And, but I do think, I mean, in retrospect, I think Edward Norton is really the star. But I love Brad Pitt. I loved him in 12 Monkeys. I loved him in 7. Like Darin was saying, when I saw 7 and 12 Monkeys, I think same year, 95, I was like, all right, I really like this guy a lot. And I do like him in Burn After Reading. I like him when he's funny. I think I loved him in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I absolutely loved him. I think there's moments of humor that are just right. And I love that he was able to nail those moments. I think it's rare that you can get some actors to hit some of these beats, and he does it perfectly. So, but sometimes, yeah, the more serious, if he's in like dramas and stuff, I'm like, whatever, I usually don't see those.
Well, he sells even the drama stuff, I think. I mean, he's that good of an actor. He's not the greatest actor, but like I said, he's a character actor in a matinee idol's body. Like he's willing to go places that most pretty boys would not be willing to go. And so that's what makes him interesting. I think, first, I'm going to say this a couple times. This might be the hottest that Brad Pitt's ever been, but it's also, so you see him fighting and you see him shirtless, and, Brad Pitt's the kind of guy now where, all right, I can admit that I like him. Even though he's this good looking, I can admit that I like him. I'm secure enough in my masculinity that I can like Brad Pitt. But when he has his shirt off, especially in the fight scenes, he is hot. You know what I'm talking about? But he's also dirty and smelly and ganky. So there's that side of Tyler that he's willing to play. It's like the part at the beginning when he has the gun in his mouth. It's like, then I remember like Tyler's affinity for cleanliness, and I wonder how clean the barrel of that gun was. So it's like he comes off not as a pretty boy, like he's good looking, obviously, but he's disgusting, to talk about the quote we talked about earlier. But even though I think he's done better parts than this, I think this might be, again, a defining role for him, because he's not just a pretty boy. He's willing to go places that regular idols aren't willing to go. That's what makes Brad Pitt interesting. And I think that's why we like seeing him when he's funnier than
he actually had his front teeth chipped for this role.
Yeah.
He went to a dentist, and I can't imagine going to a dentist and being like, yeah, please permanently take out a chunk of my front teeth, because, but I think with 12 Monkeys is when he, if I remember right, is when he was like, can I not be sexy? Can I not be attractive? Give me a weird eye that looks this way. I want to be gross. I want to be that. And
mess up my hair.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, one of the things when I was pursuing acting pretty heavy, and I had a personal trainer, and he asked me for what kind of a body I was looking for. I said, actually, I'm thinking Brad Pitt. And he's like, from Fight Club? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's what everyone wants. He's like, that's what every single person, he's like, every time. And he told me, he's like, he did a very specific thing where he got incredibly lean, but then worked out his shoulders and his arms. And it's just this very end. You can see it, like some of the back shots, his shoulder muscles and his neck. It's very defined, but then his body is incredibly lean, and it's difficult. It's a difficult thing, but you don't see it. Now they're all like jacked. I mean, like everyone's jacked if they're supposed to be ripped. Tyler Durden's not jacked.
Yeah.
He's really fit. And it's I don't know how many other times. I mean, clearly, like, people want to look like him. That's the one they're like, can you make me look like?
So, how was your trainer? Did he get you down to the Fight Club Brad Pitt body? Did you get to that point?
I was able to lose a lot of body fat.
Tim, take off your shirt.
Oh man, I'm not even close. It is so hard to to lose the body fat at the same time of gaining and maintaining the upper body muscles. I don't know if they scheduled like all of his shirt off moments within a time frame where he had that nailed, because that would be my guess, or if he had that through the whole 120-day shoot. I don't know how he did it. I didn't even get close. It was, but then again, you have to take certain supplements. You got to be able to, take things so that you can keep your body fat as low. Cause I mean, his abs are just like perfectly there. And then he's got these, it's very difficult. I don't know how many people can do it.
Yeah, you're talking about like Edward Norton and Brad Pitt hanging out. I think it got him to the point where they decided that Norton was going to starve himself and like not live healthy, and Brad Pitt was going to keep going to tanning salons, and taking his supplements. And you can see that, like, as Tyler is becoming more of a god, so to speak, you can see Jack becoming more disheveled and withering away. And I thought that was, again, you don't notice it until that's pointed out to you, but I thought that was an interesting kind of acting choice.
All right, so we have to talk about Marla, because Helena Bonham Carter, I think, was fantastic in this role, and I love when you first meet Marla in the movie. I think it's one of the funniest scenes, and I just love how annoyed he gets with Marla being around to all these meetings. It's so funny to me,
especially at the testicular cancer one, where she's smoking, or the tuberculosis. Oh, so funny, yeah.
But I read some reviews, and people didn't really like her in this movie, and I was like, why? That's weird, because I thought she was fantastic. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think she nails the tone, especially in the fact that it works when you don't know the twist, and then it works when you know the twist.
Yeah,
and that's good in the performance of, like, you think she's crazy, or just like you think. I'm trying to remember the first time seeing it. You think, yeah, she's messed up in the head, like the rest of the people in the movie aren't. But then once you see it, you like have all this sympathy, because you realize that she's having to deal with this person who's clearly giving these completely conflicting mixed signals. But she's also lost, just the same way that Edward Norton's character is lost in life. She doesn't have meaning, and I think that she really nails that tone. And like the phone call scene where she's got the thing around her neck, the cord around her neck, and she's just taking all the Xanax, I think. And there's a few of the scenes where she just really shines. I think all three of them. I mean, it's really excellent casting and performances. There's a few times where I can hear her accent, but other than that, and that's just my ear now, having worked with actors and doing ADR and stuff. I can kind of hear that kind of stuff now, unfortunately. But apart from that, it's pretty fantastic.
First of all, I like, again, this time when Tyler, the first night they spend together, and he looks at Jack and he's like, don't talk to her about me. Don't tell her about us, because that's going to ruin the whole thing. And then it's like, well, obviously, like, there's two sides to it. But when you watch it the second time, you're like, yeah, that's going to tip her off that Jack is actually crazy. He's talking about this other guy. And again, the Jack character he doesn't want to have anything to do with Marla because she's too much like him. Like, he's annoyed because she's showing up. She's in the same place he is. She's just going someplace to feel. And he doesn't like that she's home because that's him. But he wants to be Tyler. He wants to be the ideal. He wants to be the Ubermensch. He wants to be the Superman. That's what he dreams about being. Like Tyler says, I'm smart, I'm good looking, I'm everything that you don't want to be. And then Jack realizes, I'm after the wrong person. I actually need to be caring for Marla because she's what we can bond. And there are parts where I got to say, like, Brad Pitt might never been hotter. I don't know if Helena Botham-carter has ever been hotter. Like, I like her in this. It's not so much the way that she looks, although obviously she's a beautiful woman. It's the way that she has the sarcastic veneer that she puts up, and the way that she's able to, the facial expression. I'm like, she's attractive, and she's nailing these things that I like, that sarcastic pushback that she can give. That's what makes her attractive to me. But I don't know. I just like that they have these moments of sincerity, you know, when they're at the sink and Jack is like, is this making you happy? And they're having a moment that's not just sarcastic barbs like they've been having before. And what I like is you can see in Helen, the way that she performs it, she can feel there's a bond happening, but she doesn't want that. Again, she's just like Jack. She's like, I don't want to get close to somebody. Like, that's not what I want, even though that's what they really need. To the point where, again, she's pissed at him. She says, never come see me again. But I love when she shows up at the building after Jack has shot himself and killed Tyler to become a full person. I like that she shows up, she's pissed, and she walks up to him. She's like, I hate that. Oh my gosh, you're shot. And she becomes caring. And you can tell that she cares about him. And there's a sincerity that from that point on, there's no shield between both of them. Their shields are gone. And that's why they're able to hold hands and the last image besides the penis is them looking at each other before it goes to black. They can actually see each other. I just thought, holy crap. Like, I know in our last episode, we talked about Fight Club not being in my top Fincher movies, but watching it again, and especially from the things that you're talking about, Tim, I'm like, this movie is so well-rounded and it's so well done. Like, even if I don't jive with the message as much, it doesn't change my life, so to speak. Everything ties in with that message, including the performances. I just think everything's working. So everything's clicking in this movie. I don't know if there's a false note, even if the note, like your guitar, is kind of off tune. I don't know if like the note is sour. It's perfectly played, I think. Everything from top to bottom.
Well, I think the only thing left to talk about is we haven't really given a shout out to Chuck Palahniuk, the author of the book. Have either of you read the book?
No.
Okay. I know I read it after I watched the movie, and I remember not being as impressed with the book as I was with the movie. I think I probably should have done it in reverse. I should have read the book first. Yeah. But I'm more a fan of the movie than I am of the book.
Okay.
You know, even Chuck is.
Yeah.
What?
Chuck thinks the movie improved his book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's in agreement with that. He thinks that his book pales in comparison to the movie. So that's one of the reasons I never read it. I started reading Choke, and it was like I could not. I don't know what it was.
He's an acquired taste for sure.
Yeah, that was a hard. I was like, I don't think I can read this anymore.
Right,
so it's been sitting on my shelf for 15 years.
Well, from everything I know about the book, I think it does have that anarchic kind of, you know, trying to be a rabble rouser. But unlike the movie that sands the edges off with a lot of the black humor, I don't think the book has a lot of that. So it's a rough, from what I understand, it's a rough read, which is probably why I never gave it a shot. I don't know. So, but it is refreshing that even he's like, yeah, the movie was better, which you don't usually hear from authors.
Yeah, you know, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so.
Well, is there anything else that either of you want to bring up, or is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to cover?
Well, I was going to say this is just a fun little thing I thought I had, and it just kind of kept going back, you know. But this involves all of his first 4 films. So, spoiler for if you haven't seen Alien 3 or 7 or The Game or Fight Club, then I'm just going to like.
What are you doing with your life? Yeah,
exactly. But you know, like you said, he shoots himself in the cheek, and to create this whole self of him, of who Jack is, to kill off Tyler. So it's kind of a suicidal moment. I mean, it feels, when I first saw it, I thought, did he just kill himself? It's almost like a suicide. I mean, it's about as close as you can get. You're like, he's still alive. But it's interesting because the game has another similar element of someone committing suicide, and by the suicide, it then it saves him. Yeah. So it's not really a suicide. 7 is a film where a guy commits suicide by detective. He creates a scenario where then his life is then taken. I don't know if that really unlocks a positive thing. It's more of a, and then Alien 3, you got a protagonist who, if I'm remembering right, commits suicide at the end.
Yep.
And I just thought, that's wild. All of Fincher's 90s films all end with some sort of, whether it's an attempted or an actual suicide, a character does something to bring about their death, or almost should have brought about their death. I thought that's an interesting theme that plays within for 4 films in a row.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know what that means.
Maybe he's suicidal.
Maybe.
Or he was at that time, possibly.
Well, Tim, usually we'll go around the room and we'll kind of like decide whether or not the movie we're talking about is worth remembering or worth a remake. And this season we're kind of foregoing that. We're not really doing that. But if you had to say, is it worth remembering or worth a remake, what would you say about Fight Club?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely worth remembering. I think that I'm curious if it resonates with youth the same way it resonated with our generation. Again, based on seeing the younger generation in the theater and how they were kind of dumbfounded. But again, I think that we kind of had that when I saw it with my friends who I was with. I don't know if it could be remade. I mean, I don't know why. I'm not down with remakes of movies that were good the first time. It's like, remake bad ones, leave the good ones, preserve them.
There's a chance to make him better instead of just doing them over again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know if you could do, I mean, like we're talking about the acting, it's like, how much of Fight Club is that narration? It's like, could you make Shawshank Redemption? Could you remake it? Because Morgan Freeman's narration is pretty much pitch perfect, and you'd have to get someone else to somehow do that in addition to all the other things in the movie. So with Fight Club, it's like, how are you going to find someone who's going to nail the dialogue? That's a challenge in and of itself. I don't know why you would want to undertake that challenge.
Well, obviously it's about a movement, like we talked about, right? About finding yourself, about it. But why redo this story? Why not just do another story about identity and finding yourself? There's no reason to do, especially when it's this. You're not going to hit the same level of controversy either. So why bother?
Yeah. All right, Tim. Thanks, man, for coming on with us. We really appreciate it. It's great seeing you.
It's great seeing you too, man. It's been so long. It was great to meet you, Darin.
Yeah. Even though we did meet at the play when I was in the
audience. Yeah, that's right.
Before that, even, I think we went and saw World Police together, and I think Ryan was there too. We saw.
Oh yeah, I saw that with you.
Ryan was there, and Darin, you were there.
Oh, so no wonder you look familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That was.
Okay. We're all old friends. That's. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Find you, what you're working on now? How can they get in touch with you and all that kind of stuff?
I host a radio show that I do live every week, Tuesdays 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where I talk about movies, but I also play music that I'm listening to, and like talk about bands. That's pretty much my main outlet that I'm doing at the moment. I ideally will be writing soon. It's been a while since I've written, so hopefully that could lead to some stuff. But if you want to hear more of me, it's on Brown Pocket Radio is the name of it. If you Google Brown Pocket Radio, it's on Mixler.com, and it's for DJs essentially. So it's a music-based thing. My show is music and me talking about, penis shots and Fight Club.
And playing the sax, right?
I wish I could still play this. I have jaw issues, and I can't. I have it in the other room, and it just sits there. My jaw, I cannot do it anymore. I cannot. Wow. You're still playing, right?
I still play. Yeah. In fact, my drums are right behind me in that room. But yeah.
Oh yeah, great.
We try to close the door on that, yeah, because Jonny, this is a movie podcast. It's not about you being a good drummer.
Yeah.
That's
Excellent drummer.
2 worlds separate. Yeah, there you go. What is it we said? Best drummer in the galaxy, universe, galaxy,
right.
Universe. All right. Are you on Twitter or anything, Tim?
I'm on Twitter. Yeah, Tim Hade at Tim Hade. And Instagram is Timadry.
Can you spell those for people that can't spell?
Timadry, Timaggery on Instagram, and then Timhade on Twitter. And maybe I might be doing I did a show, Late Night Loft, if you want to see a something similar to this, but it was a talk show. That's on Facebook Live. If you just Late NITE Loft, Late Night Loft. I was the production. I don't know what I was. I ran the show. It was insane. Producer, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Tim. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Man. It's great.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Again, we'll talk about other movies. We'll have you back for sure.
I'd love to be back. This was great. I had a blast.
Okay.
All right.
All right. See ya.
What? Things you own end up owning you. But do what you like, man.
Okay, we're back. We want to thank Tim Hade for joining us. That was a lot of fun. He's a really good friend of mine, and we had a lot of great experiences together, in theater and in film. And I wish him the best. He's an all-around great guy, great actor. If you ever get a chance to see his movie Fortress, check it out. There are the links below. Also a short film, Dirt. And we'll link some other things as well. I know Tim and I did a lot of little short films together, and he was in one of my student films. So I'll link all those little things below. You can watch Tim. You can see, what a great actor he really is. And also just thanks a lot, Tim, for coming on. It was a lot of fun seeing you again, and hope to have you back soon. But that was.
We'll let you know when Fortress 2: Al's Revenge comes out.
Yeah, for sure. Can't wait for that one.
Yeah.
But that was Fight Club. That was a lot of fun. And Darin, I think we talked about doing our. Wait, was there anything we missed? Was there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to?
No, we talked about quite a bit with Fight Club. Again, Tim helped clear up a lot of things and help focus a lot of things. And I ended up walking away more impressed with Fight Club than I was before. Maybe that comes from maturing. Maybe that comes from better listening. I don't know. But yeah, I do have a new appreciation for the movie.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to do a top 3 David Fincher movie list, and I think that's a good way to go for this episode. I know we kind of hinted out what we would pick if we were to do a top 3, but I'll go first with my number 3. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm picking these movies because they're movies that I would rather watch. I'm not saying they're his best work, but I still think it's something that I would enjoy watching more over his other films. I'm gonna pick Zodiac. Zodiac is a movie that every time it's on, I tend to just kind of like linger on it for a while and see what's going on with it. And it always kind of like just sucks me back in and draws me in. And I remember this one time I was watching it. I was in New York, and it was late at night because I work nights, so I'm up at night all the time. And Zodiac was on. So I watched, Zodiac all the way to the end. And when it was over, I got up and I went to every window and every door, and I locked every door. I made sure all the windows were shut. And I made sure I knew where my gun was, and I was like, okay, so if someone breaks in, or some crazy guy tries to kill my family, this is how I'm going to do it. And I started.
I'll be ready. Yeah.
Oh man, it got me all kinds of getting ready and prepared. So, Zodiac also kind of left me a little creepy feeling, by the way. It always does, but really well made movie.
Okay, well, for my number 3, we talked about it, last time, saying that Fight Club was going to make it. I know that we talked briefly before we did our little break there about maybe it moved up. And again, I do have a new appreciation for Fight Club. I'm going to credit Tim for a lot of that. He really helped focus a lot of things, talking about the splicing of Tyler showing up and the subliminal messaging and the masculinity and the building of belonging to cult stuff like that. It all ties in perfectly. And I think it's a beautifully structured movie. There is a part of me that kind of pushes back because it is a little bit irresponsible filmmaking. I know that Tim says that you need that art to push things. But there is something a little bit irresponsible about giving you something like moving on and then making fun of people for, taking it too seriously, when it's like, well, you made the movie so persuasive, why wouldn't? So even though I have that new appreciation for Fight Club, it's just like you said, it just barely missed my top 3 because I don't know if I'm going to put Fight Club in and just watch it again just for fun, right? Because it's a lot, even though I think it's one of his deeper, more complex movies. So for my number 3, I'm going to go with the one that came before this. I'm going to pick Seven.
Okay.
Because it's on Netflix. I did watch it again within the past month, and it's still just as impressive. What I like about Seven is I consider it our generation's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And what I mean by that is, if you watch that Tobe Hooper movie from 1973, it's kind of unfairly known as a gory, like video nasty. But if you watch it, there's no gore in the movie at all. And I think what happens with that movie is Tobe Hooper, he cuts it in a way where the violence is just off screen, or it cuts where your brain
fills in the gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that makes it so much more disturbing because you're implicit in the crimes.
Right.
And instead of like showing you the gore and, grossing you out, disturbing, it's more disturbing to not do that and to involve you. Plus it's shot like a snuff film. So that's that's terrible. Seven is not shot like a snuff film. It's a Darius Kanji shot movie, and it's gorgeous. But what I love is that there's no violence. There's maybe one act of violence or two that we see in the movie. One is when Brad Pitt's chasing after John Doe, and John Doe's on top of the garbage truck and swats him and hits David Mills in the head. And then the other thing of violence is at the end when John Doe is shot by, again, spoilers, is shot by Mills. You see the gunshot, the headshot, but it's from a distance, from a helicopter. So it distances you from it. But all the violence, it talks about it extensively, like the guy having to remove the pound of flesh, or the woman that has to remove her nose, or take the sleeping pills, or dial 911. So it talks about these crimes, or especially the one in the sex brothel with the dildo with the knife at the end of it, with the strap on or whatever, that part where they're talking about it. It's so disturbing, but it never shows you anything. So you're completing the mental picture. You're becoming, and when you walk out of it, you're convinced that you've seen something that you haven't. I just think from that perspective, we mentioned in the movie, it's a B script. I think the Andrew Kevin Walker script is very B level, B movie. Once Morgan Freeman is meeting with Gwyneth Paltrow's character and she says that she's pregnant, if you've seen a movie before, you know where that's going to end up, if it's a serial killer movie. But the way that Fincher elevates it, even to the point where the two scenes where we still see sunlight, it's the one where Mills and Somerset are in the car and Mills is trying to remember the guy that was shot. And for a brief moment, you see sunlight come through the car window. And then Mills forgets the name of the guy he's talking about, and it fades. And it just has Somerset sitting there just depressed. And then the darkest part of that movie takes place in the blinding sun in the desert, right? So there's all this art that goes on with Seven. And so it's just a B-level movie that's raised to A-level. I'm constantly impressed by Seven, just the way that it involves you. So yeah, that's my number 3.
All right. Well, my number 2 is Seven.
Okay.
And a lot of the same reasons you just laid out there. I've always liked this movie. It really does engage you right from the beginning, and it takes you on this journey. And I love movies that do that to you. And again, the filmmaking is just superb in Seven. He definitely has a style, and his style shines through in all these movies we're talking about. And so I appreciate that. And again, man, Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, and I mean they're great in their roles, and so it's really fun to watch, even though it's
right. Well, it even has Arlie Ermy in there that we talked about with film. So he has that great moment where he's at his desk and he's talking, the phone rings and he picks it. This is not even my desk. And he hangs up. So it's got
really funny moments too.
Yeah, it's got really funny humor in it. So it is a dark movie, and I don't know, Seven's just like it's impressive. What
did Andrew Kevin Walker call it? His love letter to New York? That's what he called
it. Something like that. Again, very Quentin West, because he was working in a video store and he was in his 30s, I think, when he wrote the script. So yeah, that's a good choice. So my number 2, we won't talk about it too much because we talked about it already during our Few Good Men episode. I know you're not a big fan of it as I am, but I've got The Social Network as number 2.
Oh, okay.
I think number 1, I think it defines the 2010s. Facebook created, obviously that lasted a decade, where Facebook's obviously big, but Social Network talks about a few things that defines that decade. It talks about incel behavior with guys that are taking it too far with their girls that they feel entitled to. It's obviously the social media, how it gives a bullhorn to people that don't deserve the bullhorn. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then the third thing that it really does is it covers the topic of people that feel entitlement, like they own IP or products and stuff like that. So again, 3 very strong themes that I don't know if they planned. Actually, it was made in 2010. So I think what happened is it did. Well, it wouldn't be the 2010s, right? It'd be the 2000. What is it? The 2020s or
6 or 7 when this came out.
Something like that. So it defines that decade. Plus, we talked about in the Few Good Men episode. I just love how, Aaron Sorkin runs his mouth. You know what I mean? His scripts always go on too far, especially the newer that they are. Like, he gets too caught up in his politics. You watch the behind the scenes of this movie. I just love how Fincher sits. You can see scenes of him sitting the actors down and saying, "You're saying this word, but why are you saying this word?" So every word that comes out of their mouths has motivation. It's not just said because it's pretty. I just think that the movie's an embarrassment of riches with all the acting and everything together in the script and the direction. I just think it's again, topical movie, and it makes a statement.
I do agree with you. It is a well-made movie, and I'm not saying I don't like it. I do enjoy a lot of the movie and how it's made and everything like that. And I think, again, Aaron Sorkin's an awesome screenwriter. But I just have a hard time with the subject matter. I don't really care. I have a hard time caring about how Facebook came to be. I don't care. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to like want to sit there for 2.5 hours with a movie about Facebook. That's my only issue with it. Right. If it was something else, I'd be all in. But it's because it's about Facebook, so
right.
You can do without it. But anyway, number 1, I'm gonna pick Fight Club.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick it because I really do think this is one of his. I mean, probably his best. I mean, I haven't seen anything else that he's done that I've latched onto so fiercely. I mean, this one, when it came out, I really did become obsessed, and I watched it over and over again. And very few movies do that for me. And so when they do, like I hold them in high regard. And so that's why I think this might even be called his masterpiece. I don't know, but I think so. I think it's one of his best ever. So Fight Club is on my number 1.
Okay, and I think we just had a conversation about Fight Club, right? All right. Well, if you're talking about masterpieces and you're talking about movies that define, I have Zodiac as my number 1.
Okay.
So we're kind of switching it. Number 1 is everybody expected it to be a number 7, and it's not that at all. I mean, it's a police procedural. It's about obsession. It's about these 3 different characters: the Ruffalo, the Downey Jr., the Gyllenhaal characters. How their obsession kind of ruins their lives or takes them to places that they shouldn't be going because of this case. But if we're talking masterpieces, what I define, that's not a term that I throw around. Because I think everybody's using it these days, and it's like, not everything's a masterpiece. Just because you like it, that doesn't mean it's a masterpiece. What I think a masterpiece is it is a mission statement. It also is a director's, like, that's a director on screen. Like, if you want to know what a director is, you look at a masterpiece. I think Zodiac, for me, is this masterpiece. It has the devotion, like, he's so devoted to all the details, like so detail oriented, to the point where I think they made up newspapers like to be the actual articles. So so it's not just fake stuff that's like filtered or piffle. And then obviously it's the obsession, which David Fincher is like. I think that's a theme that runs through this whole movie, is the obsession. All of its filmography is the obsession that people have, and what that does to you as a person, and how it kind of either destroys you or builds you. And so you could tie that into every one of his movies. I just think Zodiac is just fascinating. Even the way that the 3 Zodiac killing scenes are shot with different actors, so you don't know. There's nothing, and they're very I don't want to say tame, but they're very matter of fact in murder scenes, which makes them more disturbing. Where, as in 7. You're watching the movie the entire time. This is more of a depiction of everything that happened. I just think it's fascinating how each character takes over to the point where it's a Gyllenhaal at the end, but it doesn't solve it. The movie seems to solve it, but we're not 100% sure who the killer is, right? And I just, oh my gosh, I just love you describing Fight Club. That's how Zodiac is for me. It's like every single detail. I'm just in love with. I drink it in. So I think Zodiac.
Did you check your mirrors and your windows and doors after you watched?
I did, and I'm making sure that all my doors are locked when we're in cars. I mean, we don't park for too long on the side of the street, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's that disturbing. It does capture that creepiness of the time where the Zodiac killer was actually stalking victims. And so, yeah, it's the polar opposite of 7, but it's fascinating for David Fincher is one of the most interesting directors, like we talked about, because even if I don't like his movies, I'm still fascinated by them because he has something to say.
He always does good work, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're never lazy. Like when you watch a Fincher movie, even like we talked about Panic Room, it's not lazy filmmaking when the camera goes through.
Panic Room almost made my list. It was like my runner-up.
Yeah, very well done, right? Very tense, even though it has Jared Leto. So yeah. So what were your top three?
Fight Club, Seven, and Zodiac.
Okay, and I had Zodiac, Social Network, and Seven. So kind of the same list. I like how it kind of works together in tandem. So
all right, well, Darin, let's continue our string of guests. I know we have a lot this season, so who do you have next time?
Okay, well, we've got, I'm going to keep saying this, another Twitter friend. Her name is Lindsay Washburn. She's got her own YouTube channel. She runs a lot of, she's like a VHS kid is what I call it. Like she's addicted to like VHS movies or 80s horror movies, and so she's really big into those. She's an actress, so she's been in a few movies, so she knows her stuff.
All right.
She's very quick-witted, she's very smart, and so I did reach out and I was like, if you ever want to come onto our show, please feel free to just let me know. And she's like, that sounds great, what did you have in mind? And I was like, told her about the 90s, told her about the movie she wanted to do, and one of the movies that she chose was From Dusk Till Dawn.
All right.
So I thought, again, it's Tarantino, or he's going to be coming up a lot. I thought that, and Robert Rodriguez obviously was very big during that decade. So I thought that'll be fun. It'll tie in with her kind of forte with horror movies. And it's obviously it's a throwback to those schlocky like B movies, right? That's obviously what Tarantino's doing. So I just thought that would fit right in with what, obviously what she's already doing with her brand. So we've got Lindsay Washburn. It's going to be a great conversation we're going to have with her from Dusk Till Dawn next time.
All right. Well, I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And this is
NostalgiaCast.